Hi and welcome to Lecture 2. In this lecture we'll talk about REST briefly and how Rails adapted some of the RESTful principles. So what is REST? REST stands for Representational State Transfer, and it was a dissertation that this guy Roy Fielding wrote as part of his PhD. And the basic idea is that that your web application should be designed as a virtual state machine where you're able to go from one page to another page. And the idea is to think of your web application as something that is very closely related to your resources. So let's say your cars or your people. And the idea is, don't think of it as a bunch of HTML pages. Think of it as resources and how those resources are represented. So that is a state, right? So it could be a bunch of HTML pages about people, or it could be maybe JSON information or XML information, and you're able to go from one page to the other. So for example, you have one page that says many cars, and then you click on one of those links and you go to a specific car, and you're able to modify or delete a car, and so on. So as I mentioned, what Rails took out of REST is that REST is all about resources. So therefore you should be able to perform the following 7 actions on your resources. You should be able to list them, show a specific one, destroy a specific one, provide a way to create a new resource, maybe by providing an HTML form with some empty fields, and actually create a resource. Provide a way to update an existing resource, maybe through the same HTML form that now has existing information about the resource, and update that information by having another action called update. And that is how Rails is able to scaffold a scaffolded controller, so in our case posts, that has those 7 actions: index, show, destroy, new, edit, create, and update. And this is actually another chart, another way to look at things. We have the controller action, index. The purpose of it: list all the available posts, let's say in our case, or maybe list all cars. And the parameters, well, the index action is not going to have any parameters because you're listing all of them. You don't really care for a specific post or specific car. Post underscore path will be the named route, will be how the Rails variable, how you could refer to the path. And the method, the HTTP method that's being used is get. Usually, get is used when you want to get the information, and it doesn't change anything on the server. And post or put is used when you actually are creating the resource or updating the information about the resource. Okay, so we have an index, we have a show action, which is for a specific one. So obviously the show action is going to have an ID of a specific car or post or person that you want to look at, and the path for that is post path, and the HTTP method is going to be the get method. Then new and create go together. The new action provides a form. When I say a form, I mean like an HTML form. That's not going to have any parameters. The form is just going to have, so when you're requesting this action from a controller, you don't have to provide it any parameters because you just want a blank form where you could start filling information about the resource. And the create action is going to go together with the new action. So the new action is going to submit its information to the create action. So you're going to have a hash, basically key value of the parameters. So maybe last name of its value, first name of its value, and so on. For a person, and for cars it could be something else, obviously. So that's the new and create. Then the other two is edit. So in the case of edit, you're also going to have a form, but you're going to have a form that you're going to want that contains information about the existing resource. So you're going to want to pass in the ID that actually is going to let the controller find the resource and give information back and display that information in the HTML form. And the name of a route is going to be edit underscore post underscore path. And this is also a get because you're just getting information from a server, you're not actually updating it. but edit is going to submit the information to the update method, and it's going to submit the ID, the original ID that you found, as well as the record hash with possibly the same or modified attributes that you're going to go ahead and update on the server, which is why it's a put HTTP method. And destroy is the last action, which also the idea is you're destroying a specific record. So you're going to pass in an ID as a parameter. And the interesting part here is that post path is the same thing as post path here. So they look the same, but the difference is in one case it's a get. So you just get in it, so you're going to show it. And in the other case, the verb that's used is delete. So even though the actual URL is the same, but because the verb is different, Rails knows to direct it to a different action. One is going to be a show, one is going to be a destroy, and if it's an update, it's going to be an edit. If you forget the chart on the previous page, you could always anytime just run rake routes, and you'll know the exact routes that are being mapped in your application. So here is the controller action, so posts index, posts create, and so on. And this is the URI pattern, so this is what you would actually type in the browser. So /posts will get you to an index action. Now, another point that I mentioned is that don't think of it as HTML resources, right? So for example, you could do posts.json. Maybe you want to see the information as JSON, not necessarily as HTML. But the idea is the same, that you just go into a resource or a collection of resources, and you're getting those resources in a RESTful kind of way using these 7 actions. So rake routes will show you the controller and the action, will show you the URI pattern, will show you which verb is being used, because sometimes the actual URL is the same. So for example, post.id and post.id is the same, but the action is different because of a different HTTP verb. And the prefix is just the actual Rails variable, so it's post underscore path, or new post underscore path, or edit post underscore path, and so on. So in summary, think of your application in terms of the actual resources, not in terms of just a few HTML pages that just happen to be there. And think of the 7 RESTful actions that need to be done with those resources. And once you understand how those 7 actions work, you'll be able to figure out how scaffolding works and how a lot of things in Rails work. So next, we're actually going to do a deep dive into the indexed RESTful action and see how the index action works.